For the 25th anniversary of the Smith County Master Gardener Association's Bulbs to Bloom sale, we are interviewing a lot of people who were involved in the very first sale. And I have with me right now Greg Grant, who is our current county horticultural agent, but at the time that the sale started, he was one of our very first speakers. So he knows a lot about how this bulb sale got started and can share with us some information. And he is an expert on southern bulbs. So how did you get involved in a little bitty bulb sale in Tyler, Texas, way back in 1998?
That's a long way back to remember, but luckily I've been growing bulbs since childhood. I was interested in trying to identify the bulbs that grow over the South, not being able to shop at the nursery as a child. I rummaged old home places and they're just full of lots of cool naturalized bulbs. And so I was already interested in bulbs. I started working on trying to identify what they were, and then actually trying to figure out if we could farm them in the South. So I had a little bulb farm going on. I was pretty sure I was working at Stephen F. Austin State University as a teacher. And then Ed McGee, who somewhere along there was president of the Men's Garden Club, and I think maybe president of the Smith County Master Gardeners, or at least in charge of this new bulb sale that he wanted to have. And we had worked together on things to sell at the Men's Garden Club sale, and he'd come to King's Nursery, and Oliver Friend was a good friend of mine as well. And then Joel and I were friends, so we knew each other from other events, and he knew that I was adamant about people growing the right bulbs in the South. So he came up with this wonderful idea that the Smith County Master Gardeners would have kind of the same thing he did with the Men's Garden Club. They had a sale, but they didn't just sell pansies and flats of things everybody else had. They had custom grown, unique things, and they had King's Nursery growing for them. Well, he came up with an idea to just, of course, you're going to interview him, I hope, and you may find out that some of this is true or none of it's true, but this is what I remember. And so he wanted to have a bulb sale, and so he asked me, what we should grow. And he knew for himself that there were things he bought that didn't grow. And he'd been to my lectures and heard me talk about it and seen things and visited my place and seen things that did grow. So he wanted us to be able to sell things that were truly adapted, figure out where to get them. And I remember we even schemed on exactly when to have it. And so it's a little different now back then, because it was much smaller. It has grown and grown. And so the idea was to have it before Dutch bulbs were even available, to only have bulbs that were adapted. And of course, the truly southern bulbs, they start to grow about the time oxblood lilies and spider lilies bloom. So that's when they put down the root growth. So we're talking about August, September. And so the key was, we had this sale, had only locally grown things. Of course, there's not very many growers, but it didn't take many for a small sale. And so the idea was to have it before Dutch bulbs, have unique bulbs that you couldn't buy anywhere else. They were truly adapted, that didn't need water, didn't need fertilizer, didn't need primping, pruning, digging, dividing, all that sort of thing. And so I don't remember who else he got from. I think Bill Welch in California. I'm not sure if Keith Crowder was doing it then, maybe Patty Allen in Houston. But because I had a little bulb farm, I didn't intend on being a bulb farmer, but because I already had them growing and I was figuring things out, I was one of the supplier of bulbs, and I was, I think, a very first speaker too, and so I was in whole hog from get-go, because it was just a great idea. And each year it grew and grew. It was originally, if I remember correctly, now I didn't come on the bulb sale day. I mean, I remember he probably came and picked up the bulbs from me, but I know it was an outdoor event, and it was literally only American grown, Texas grown, some California grown, but American grown things. And it was held the latest we could get the bulbs, but far earlier than what it is now, because we didn't have to wait on bulbs to go from Holland to New York to Virginia to Texas. And so it's amazing that it's still going on. So it's how good ideas generally play out. If it's good enough, it stays around.
It is a wonderful thing that we have it here. So what was the early conferences like? What other than it being bigger, how has it changed?
Well, there were always good crowds. It was held at the Rose Center. There were people came from came from all over. I mean, it didn't take long for people to figure out that we were doing something special and that they could get bulbs that they literally couldn't get anywhere else. And so there were some big fans that helped us along the way. I mean, Texas Gardener and Neil Sperry's have always promoted the sale, but I remember back then, she's retired now, but my friend Mary Ann Green was the garden writer at Dallas Morning News, and so she would play it up. We'd have people come from literally all over. I think some came from Oklahoma one year to the sale. One year, and I spoke a number of times. I mean, it's just like our programs, you get tired of it, we speak it every time, but one year I talked, and the most famous bulb person in the state, Dr. Thad Howard from San Antonio, who wrote a bulb book before Scott Ogden and taught Scott Ogden what he knew about bulbs, was in the audience there. He drove from San Antonio to come to the Smith County Master Gardener bulb sale just because we were doing something and selling. Nobody else did that. I mean, maybe the Houston Bulb Mart did for a while. There used to be the Garden Club ladies in San Antonio did for a while, but it's really hard to do a uniquely adapted sale. It's just so easy to buy what's available and pick through it what's adapted, and so it's truly unique and crowd-wise about the same. It has been popular from day one. It's gotten even more people, and of course we've had to have more and more bulbs because more and more people come to buy the bulbs. But the crowds were good, and it always sold out real quick because the problem with the truly unique bulbs, there's not enough of them. So there are billions and tons from Holland, but there are dozens and hundreds available and locally grown, and far fewer even now. I mean, of the growers that we used to have access to, there were probably half a dozen, and we've almost gotten down to one or two. So it makes it difficult, but it's still a wonderful thing, and I hope we keep doing it because it fits everything Extension teaches. It fits everything I teach, Master Naturalists teach, everything. The fact that you don't apply water, you don't apply pesticide, you don't apply fungicide, you plant them one time and they get better year after year after year. I mean, they're just darn few things in horticulture that they do that. Or in life, period. I mean, imagine putting your money in the stock market and knowing it's going to grow forever and you're never going to lose it. And so it's a cool thing. So I'm glad we're still doing it and hope to for years to come. I plan on being here 10 more years, so let's get 10 more years out of it.
Let's do it. So why is it important in your mind to provide this opportunities to gardeners and plant lovers in East Texas?
The biggest reason that we do it is because, I'll just use myself as an example. I was in love with, first of all, I was in love with plants. Keeping the class terrarium in first grade. Before that, I was chastised in kindergarten for putting tulips in every picture I drew because Miss Gilbert saw I was smart and artistic. She's like, well, you can't put the same flower in every picture. You got to diversify. But I love tulips. I want to grow tulips. I want to be a tulip farmer. And couldn't find out pretty quick we can't do tulips other than the short-term annual here. And so if you look at nurseries and garden centers and catalogs, like my little grandmother Ruth ordered hundreds and hundreds of bulbs every year, boxes and boxes. Well, the far majority of them either are annuals here or short-lived perennials, or they're long-lived perennials, but they only bloom for a few years. So we spend tons and tons of money. And of course, then they sell you bone meal and things to go with it. So if you have a lot of money, and right now you can drive around Tyler and see who has money because you spend a lot of money for tulips. They come from another continent. They ship them on a boat. We put them in the refrigerator for 3 months. We do soil prep. I mean, the Dallas Arboretum spends probably $1 million a year on an annual tulip display and throws them away. So just a colossal waste of money, resources, time. And so as a real gardener, I mean, I found out pretty quick, yeah, I love these things, but they're not working. And then I look around and find out there were things working. And so, people can do what they want, but a lot of people just do what they see and buy what's available at the store. But so many things that we get are not adapted. I just looked at a beautiful clump of bulbs blooming this morning that I'd bought. Is something special from the big box store that I thought it was so unusual that it was available. It was the double sport of ice follies called Ice King. And here I plant, well, it's just ice follies. So even when you get the right thing here, it's oftentimes mislabeled. A lot of things are virused, and so it's not fair to the public. And that included me as a gardener to be sort of duped because all those bulbs they're selling from Holland are the opposite of the kind of bulbs that we grow. Good for the northern 2/3 of the U.S., good for Europe, but not good for the South. Very few of them. So out of the hundreds and hundreds that are available, there are literally dozens that are adapted here, and so it's just not fair for people to fail. And so we use that information, knowing what's good and what's bad, to give people what they need to know to be successful. And so that's most people don't like to fail as a gardener, and so if you fail enough, pretty soon you're not gardening, and I'm not going to be happy till everybody gardens. And so having 50% of the public not gardening is not acceptable, and a lot of it's because they're growing plants they won't live, and they think it's their fault, and it's not.
So, what do you think is the best thing about the bulb cell?
God, there's so many good things. It's hard to say. To me, the best thing about it is, and it's not what most people say. Most people say the best thing is I'm able to get something that I can't get from somewhere else. The best thing to me is a lot of these things that we're selling have been successful for 50, 100, 200, I'm thinking one of them 600 years. And so the fact that there's that much history, I mean, we're worried about plants living while we're gone for the weekend or gone on a vacation. And when I see things like Campanile jonquils are in bloom right now, those have been cultivated for 400 years. Lint lilies are in bloom right now. They've been in cultivation for 600 years. Some of these things, like white cemetery iris, they've been in cultivation for 1,000 years. And so it's just amazing to me when something is truly good, it's good. And people argue with me all the time. Well, it blooms for 3 or 4 years. That's enough. And I'm like, no, it's not. It better at least do 20 and preferably 200. Grand Primo has been in cultivation for 200 years. So it just amazes me that there are plants that are that good that my ancestors, their ancestors that came from the East, their ancestors that came from Europe, those plants all started in Europe, came to the United States, moved their way across, and we're still growing. And some of them are new, and we do work hard to identify the new ones that are adapted, but we literally have to go through dozens or hundreds to pick out what few are adapted. But a lot of them that we're selling have been successful for every generation of my family and every generation of gardener in the South. And it just amazes me that we're selling something and creating excitement that you might see in a ditch or a roadside, but yet most people don't have access to, and what they do have access to is generally not adapted. And so we're doing an amazing thing by providing success to people in history and culture. And so not everybody's into that, but every one of those bulbs has a story. And so I keep those locked in up here, and what few people are interested in, then I'll let them know. But they just care that it's adapted, but there's a whole lot more to it than even that.
And so, what is your personal favorite bulb, and why do you think everyone should have it in their landscape? And it can be summer bulbs or fall bulbs.
This is a hard one, but thanks to my mentor, Dr. Jerry Parsons, would always say, name your favorite such and such. No, well, I've got 100. No, you get to name one. No, well, let me get the fact. No, one. And so I'm trained now to pick one. And so it's really hard because there's probably 10 or 12 that I almost can't live without. But if I really got down to a single favorite, it would probably be the Campanile jonquil. And so I love little bitty jonquils. They're fragrant, they're heavenly, and of course I can spot them at 70 miles an hour on the roadside. But they're the littlest of all these things that we grow. And Campanile is this natural hybrid in the wild from hundreds of years ago that somebody found. It's half daffodil, half jonquil. So it's bigger like a daffodil, but smaller and sweet and fragrant like a jonquil. But it's a sterile hybrid like a mule, so it's extra tough, doesn't set any seeds, so when you see it in pastures, roadside, anybody can grow it. My mom just said it was her favorite the other day. And she lives on an iron ore hill that my dad said when he was a kid didn't even have grass on it. It wasn't until the introduction of Bahia grass that hill even grassed over. It's a terrible place to grow things. So all these pretty daffodils, and I like them too, well, they won't grow there. And so she asked me the other day, she's not real good with bulbs, but she said, now do Campanile, I've been trying to teach her this her whole life, but she said, now do Campaniles spread on their own? Because she's noticed her acre in front of her house is now lots, almost full of Campaniles, when originally there was just a few clumps. And so I said, no, they don't spread, so I've planted every one of those there, but they will be there for as long as the foliage doesn't get mowed off forever. And she said, well, I think that's my favorite because it's the toughest and it's so pretty because even on the roadside, bleary-eyed, it still screams coverage. It's not a cut flower, it wasn't raised for a daffodil show, but as far as permanence and investment, I mean, I started with a handful as a kid and I probably produced 10,000 plus in my life. And they're exact clones of each other. So yours is going to be just as pretty as the neighbor's, and it's just as pretty as Empress Josephine's, and just as pretty as the one that red tape painted in Lily ACE. So it's amazing that there's something that good and that tough. And to me, if you got to go back and divide it again to keep it blooming, it's not worth it. And it's worth it when you're young and enthusiastic. But at some point, you can't bend over. There'll be a point where you can't even see it, and there'll be a point when you're dead and gone, and there's something really comforting that you can plant something that will literally, which is a little bit of a rule following, will keep going forever. And so that's just almost unheard of. So you ask me tomorrow, it may be different, but today it's Campanile John's.
I love that answer. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say? Do you want to talk about how the kind of education we do that goes with the sale?
That's very important, is because being a master gardener, president of all things, I'm in the middle of training a new class right now, and so every day I have to remind them, and I, of course, have to remind our own group. We've got close to 170 and this is our best fundraiser. And of course, you got to have money to do everything, every kind of education, every demonstration, the Tyler Botanical Garden. But our undying mission in extension is education, and so we don't have the bulb sale to make money. I mean, it's nice if we make money, we do need the money, but that's not our main goal. Our goal is education, and so every now and then someone gets a little uptight, or we made $2,000 less than we did last year, or something. If we don't do member-grown bulbs, we're not going to make as much money. And I always say our goal is to teach people. So yes, we do make money off this to spend on educational projects, and so we take that money to do education. But even more important, the reason that we sell these particular bulbs is to teach people that there are bulbs that are adapted to this climate, to this rainfall, that you can grow in an earth-kind fashion without having to irrigate, without having to spray with any insecticide or any fungicide, without having to put any fertilizer on it, which uses up natural resources. The prices have tripled on fertilizer, and so these are really important things garden-wise. And so our mission is not to sell bulbs; it's to teach people that there are plants that don't need all these things, that still give you benefit and beauty and ease of care. And so, if you want to grow something else hard to care for, if you want to plant annual tulips, that's fine, if that's what you want to do. But I think most of the public, if they knew they had something they could stick in the ground and walk away and knew it got better every year without having to add anything to it, they get excited too. So that's why it's generally easy when you get a crowd in front of you and you show pictures, because when you look at a package at the store, of course, they're all pretty. I've got a Dutch catalog my whole life. I was in love with every bulb in there. But when you actually plant them and see, this is dead, this is sickly, this is green with no flowers, and this one that maybe didn't look so pretty in the picture, the bouquet gets bigger every year. Pretty soon you learn, I'd rather have a bouquet of any color versus dead or nothing. And so it's a good educational opportunity, and that is our goal. And it's okay to make money off education, because we turn around and spend it on education, and so that's what we do.
That's exactly right. And we do take every dime that the Smith County Master Gardeners makes either goes into a scholarship fund for horticultural students at SFA and at Texas A&M, or it goes right back into our educational program.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Much.
I'll talk about bulbs any day of the year.
Okay. It's the 25th anniversary of the Smith County's bulb sale, and Ed, you were one of the originators of that sale, so we wanted to interview you as part of our celebrations, not only of the anniversary of the bulb sale, but also for the 30th anniversary of Smith County Master Gardeners.
Good.
And we also have Joe Helen McGee, who was the third president of the Master Gardener Association. So Ed, how did you get interested in bulbs to begin with?
Well, I retired out of Houston in 1994. Moved up here, found these 7 acres. We moved here in August of '94, and it had 3 trees on it, nothing else. And so we said we can learn about landscaping. So there was a landscaping class offered by Texas Agri-Life Extension here in Tyler. Dr. Steve George, horticulturist from Dallas County, and Keith Hansen from Smith County, horticulturist, presented the program, and so we learned about landscaping. And from that we learned about master gardeners. And so we signed up for the Class 2 of the Master Gardeners in January 1995. And we attended that, and one of the people that spoke to us was Greg Grant, who was also with Texas AgriLife, and very, very knowledgeable. And he really was an expert on heirloom bulbs. I didn't know about heirloom bulbs. Actually, when I moved here, I was wanting to plant some bulbs. And I got this really slick catalog from New Jersey about these bulbs. I ordered $100 worth of bulbs, planted them, and they did nothing.
Yes.
Well, they came up, but that was it. And so when I heard about heirloom bulbs, which would come back year after year, naturalized, I said, this is really something I'd like to do. And so that's when I got started in my interest in daffodils and in other bulbs as well.
So what gave you the brainwave to start the bulb sale for the Master Gardeners?
Well, here again, we go back to Greg Grant. Greg knew about a bulb sale in Houston. It was in West Houston. We lived in North Houston. We didn't ever go to that bulb sale, didn't know much about it or anything about it. But, so he told us about that. And Joe Helen and I said, you know, maybe that's something that we could do with the Master Gardeners, is to have a bulb sale. Because the bulbs weren't available, heirloom bulbs weren't available in the local markets here. People didn't really know about them that much, and so we decided, well, maybe that's something we could do, you know, within Master Gardeners. And so we talked to Greg Grant, and he told us, you know, suggested the concept and the do's and the don'ts. And he knew about all the different varieties, of course, and the sources of those varieties. So that's how we started.
So besides raising money, which was always a goal of the sale, what were your goals for the sale?
Okay, well, actually, making money was not the primary goal. We looked at that as a byproduct. As actually, the primary goal was education. People didn't know about heirloom bulbs. All they knew about bulbs was like this slick catalog, like that, and tulips and that sort of thing. And so we just thought that education was a primary thing. And then secondarily, since there were no local suppliers of bulbs, of the heirloom bulbs, we said we could be the source of those bulbs and teach people about the varieties and how they could enhance the landscape.
So who did you buy them from in the beginning?
Well,
Because I remember we were always like, they're not from Holland, they're not offshore.
Right.
yeah. Well, here again, Greg Grant
That's
was
what it
the
boils
source.
down to, yeah.
Greg Grant grew bulbs, and we visited him in Arcadia. He's got a nice little place there, and he grows everything in the world, but he also grew heirloom bulbs. And so he offered to be a source. And then he told about other sources. It wasn't so much local sources. The key is the varieties. You know, that's the key to heirloom bulbs. So you know, I bought bulbs from Keith Cridler out of Mount Pleasant. He grew bulbs.
We went up there one year.
You're right.
In fact, we organized a trip to go up there and see all the bulbs, because he has acres of bulbs that he grew. And he's very, very knowledgeable. And I'll just pass this on. He had actually bought some bulbs. You could buy some bulbs from the box stores. They were mostly just, you know, large daffodils. He planted those bulbs and found that half of them weren't true to the variety that they advertised that they were. So here again, you know, it's making sure that we give people the varieties that will be successful as heirloom bulbs in the garden. But then we found a lady down in Houston on a little home on a city lot that grew bulbs and sold them. We found a man in California that sold Grand Primo and Early Cheer Narcissus, and bought from him. We found a man who sold crinums in San Antonio. So just different people, and we'd learn from year to year, we'd learn about more sources, and we could expand and offer more varieties.
So how many people showed up the first bulb sale you had?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but let me just back up and tell about where we had the first sale and what was involved.
The first one I went to was outside.
Yeah.
That's right.
They were.
The very first one, we got the bulbs, took them to my workshop here in the backyard, and Joelle and I, packaged them in the little brown paper sacks from the grocery stores. I printed up labels from, like mailing labels on the computer that gave the variety and the number of bulbs and the price.
You
We
still
stuck
do that.
and put them on the sacks and packaged them up, stapled them together, put them in boxes, loaded them in our Suburban, took them down to the Rose Garden. So we said we were going to have them in the Rose Garden.
So you were a one-man band.
Yes,
Well, two.
pretty much.
One man.
Yeah, two is one.
Uh,
And so we took them to the Rose Garden, and where the Idea Garden is now, we set up a couple of tables. I had a big tent, a 10 by 25 tent that I put up over the tables, and that's where we set it up. And I publicized it, I had some experience in public affairs, so I did a lot of, publicizing. I talked to Mike Edwards on KTVB, local radio, all the local newspapers around here, the gardening magazines like Texas Gardener and Neillsbury, the Master Gardener clubs in the area, the garden clubs in the area. I let all of them know about this. And so we had a good turnout, and we were pleased with we probably had a few bulbs left over, not knowing how many to order or anything like that. But we learned from year to year. I kept a list of the sold bulbs and the unsold bulbs, so a lot of this is determined by availability of the bulbs. I mean, there's some bulbs that are very hard to get, hard to find, and so you just get what you can
Byzantine
get.
glads.
Like Byzantine glass is a perfect example.
Andy, I have a little something I would like to kind of jig his mind about. He became real good friends with Mike Edwards on KTVB. And on the morning of 9/11, he was to call in and talk about the bulb sale and start publicizing it. Ed was on the phone with Mike Edwards on hold, and Mike said, "Wait a minute, Ed, something big's coming across the wire, I've got to get this." We heard through the phone Mike Edwards talking about trying to figure out what had gone on, and it was 9/11, and it was that morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
So that's kind of a thing that really sticks in my mind that,
Yeah.
and then I turned the TV on and the rest is history, but that's
So
what
how
we
did you
do.
so you guys were doing this all by yourself. So how did you get because the first year when I was like an intern, I mean, we were down in the classroom in the extension office, and you would like bring those big bags of bulbs in and just dump them on the table, and we'd start bagging them all.
Right.
But it was
Right.
all hands on deck for
Right.
everybody to
Yeah.
work.
Oh, that
Exactly
helped,
right.
that was better.
That's how it grew from year to year. I guess I was a coordinator for like 8 years, and I just looked in my records and on my computer. And I think the 8th year we offered like 12,000 bulbs in 70 different varieties, and so it did grow. And we tried to keep it organized. And
Did you
by
ever
that
try to
time,
estimate how much you needed? Or did you just
it
take what you got?
It just grew. It just grew
That's
from
kind
year.
of what he did. He
It
got.
was just grew from year to year. It was just kind of trial and error
He
kind of
quick-
approach.
quickly found out which ones were really in demand, and he would get as many as he could of what of them. And I remember the first year that we had them, I was telling him, and we had sacked all these, and we had them all in our Suburban, and we had the table in there and the tent in there, and I thought, please, I pray that we don't have a wreck or something on the way up there and destroy all this, but we did fine with it.
Yeah, no, it grew and it grew from year to year, and by that time, like you say, when you came in, a lot of master gardeners were pitching in and helping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember one year, I think Greg was the speaker, but it was the bulbs were outside on that driveway going up to the Heritage Rose Garden, and these people came out of the conference, and it was like locusts. And they came down those stairs, and within 15 minutes, every last bulb was sold.
Gone, right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I just told him,
Yeah.
I remember that too. I remember feeling like you need to duck under the table
Yeah.
because they're just coming at you.
So when did the conferences start?
The conferences started 2 years before that.
Okay.
And so initially, we didn't think about combining it. And so that happened several years later, where
Yeah,
we combined the fall gardening conference with the bulb sale. And so that way, we would invite speakers to come in and talk about bulbs. And so that was an attraction as well. And we got to the point where people were coming from Shreveport, coming from Dallas, coming from Belton and
Bell
Waco
County, yeah,
area.
they always came, Bell
Yeah.
County
Yeah.
always came.
So, we had the speakers, we had Greg Grant, of course. He's a big attraction. We had Keith Hansen, who was, at that time, our Smith County horticulturist with Texas Ag Life. We had Scott Ogden. In this book, Garden Bulbs from the South, was a big one. And we had Scott Ogden come speak. And then we had Keith Cridler, we mentioned him earlier. He had the bulb sale, and he also is an expert on bluebirds, and he would speak about bluebirds. We had Cecilia Jones, who was sister's farm in Louisiana, grew heirloom bulbs. And then a lady named Julia Ryan, who authored a book on perennials for Texas gardens and how bulbs could enhance perennial gardens. So we had a number of different speakers, and that helped in attracting people to come to the bulb sale.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite memory of bulb sale?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I guess one of the favorite memories is just visiting these locations, like Keith Cridler, going up there and just seeing all these bulbs that he had grown through the years, and different varieties, and just talking to him about growing the bulbs and learning from him. And then this lady, Patty Allen, down in Houston, I mentioned her, that grew bulbs on a little city lot in East Houston. And she would go around and see a building site. And before they started building on that site, if it had bulbs on it, she'd go dig them up, take them to her yard and plant them. And she had bulbs all over her little lot there. It was,
amazing.
and she would meet me in Lufkin. She'd drive up from Houston with the bulbs. I'd meet her in Lufkin. I'd drive to Mount Pleasant and pick those up as well. So to me, that was one of the most interesting things about this. And the other one you've already mentioned is that time when we first had it on the grounds of the Rose Garden near the Heritage Garden, and seeing those people just flood out down to that site was really something to me. I said, I think we got it made, Joel. This bulb sale's going to be a real success.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is a part of that is that I enjoyed seeing these people who had been growing them, nurturing them, interested in these bulbs. They were so happy to have people who appreciated them and wanted to help educate and spread the word about those kind of bulbs, like Keith Cridler and Patty Allen. Patty Allen is where was our first source for the oxblood lily or the schoolhouse lily. At the time, they were available at Old School, but they were so expensive. I think they were like $12 a bulb. To
And
buy
their
from Old
Byzantine
School.
Glads were $14
Yes.
a bulb.
Crazy. And
Yeah.
Patty Allen knew that's how we were able to get them, but, because she was a lot less than that. But I think that was one thing to see people look, and Greg Grant was right up there at the top saying, yay, 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 you know, because this was a dream that he had. And the truth of the matter is, the bulb sale in Houston, they were not heirloom bulbs.
They were from offshore.
That was one thing
Church.
that Greg was very concerned about. don't let the bulb sale become something where you're looking at just profit and just selling bulbs for selling bulbs' sake. He wanted to make sure that the bulbs that we sold were true varieties.
Absolutely.
The people, they knew when they got those bulbs, that's what they were getting.
Well, and we
And
still
so
have
we've
to
been
do
real
search.
careful.
We still have to do searches for some things like the St. Joseph lilies. Those are
Right.
really hard to find.
Yes.
Byzantine glads, of course.
Yes.
And so we're still always like looking, and we've got members that like are lining things out and growing them too, so we
Good.
can have the supplies.
And there were some suppliers, they were just so expensive that we just I didn't buy from them because, you know, you just couldn't offer them and to sell here in East Texas at those prices. They just wouldn't have sold.
So you've got quite a display here on your own property. How many bulbs do you have planted here?
I have no idea how many bulbs I have planted.
I mean, it's thousands, isn't it?
Yes, I would think so, because they've multiplied through the years. When we moved here, we actually moved here on these 7 acres, and there were just 3 trees. So everything is planted here. I've planted over 25 years, and that's true with the bulbs as well. So it's, and they come from another different sources. I would buy from these suppliers, and then I would buy the unsold bulbs. Oftentimes I'd just go ahead and buy the bulbs that didn't sell and buy those and plant those. And then also, I've gone to the homes of master gardeners and dug bulbs. They've shared them with me, which is nice. And then one time I heard about the home in downtown Tyler. They were offering all the bulbs out of their yard if you come dig them up. And so I went and dug them up and brought them here. Bill Rash, who was a member of the Master Gardeners, he saw that they were getting ready on highway construction, an area where there'd been bulbs, and he went, picked all these bulbs up and brought me some of them, and I planted those. So I've gotten the bulbs from a number of different sources, a number of different ways, and it's just really gratifying now just to see them bloom from year to year.
One of the nicest things that happened was John Arnold, who was a master gardener, a retired teacher from Robert E. Lee High School, lived over off of Biloxi. And he called us and said, I'm not going to fool with taking care of these bulbs anymore. I have oxblood lilies all out around this oak tree, and I want y'all to come over and dig up all you want. Well, we got way more than 100 bulbs of that. And that is what we planted out there. This is not a good, of course, oxblood lilies wouldn't be blooming now, but this is not a good blooming year at all for bulbs. These last 2 or 3 years have been the worst we've ever had, but I have pictures of where we just have oxblood lilies just all blooming out there going toward that pond. They're beautiful, you know, short-lived, and we also have pink ones too.
Ooh. Lastly, what advice would you give somebody who's just starting out and wants to have a nice display of bulbs?
Well, first they go to the bulb sale. That's what they need to do, is go to the bulb sale. And, because one of the things we had at the bulb sales, I always prepared a little handout that gave a list of every variety and some information about that variety.
We still do that.
And so people can learn about the different varieties and what they offer, and then just plant them. Take them home and plant them. What I like about heirloom bulbs is they don't require any care, no fertilization, no watering, just plant them in the ground. It really, if you just different depths, they'll come up, I've found. So it's not critical, it's just what depth you plant them, just cover them with the dirt and put them in a sunny location, a well-drained location. And they just naturalize, they just keep them coming back year after year. Now, one thing is they will keep multiplying, and sometimes they multiply so much that they'll stop blooming. And so it's best to separate them and plant them.
Just spread them out.
And spread them out, but, so I think that's the key.
Okay. Well, thanks. This was fun.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
fun
glad
to
to do this.
think about it. Yeah.